In this video, we're going to take a look at applying materials and textures. We have our crow. Now that we've modeled it and we've added UVs, we want to add some color information. The majority of our shading and texturing is all handled within the Hypershade. Now we can open the Hypershade in a brand new window by going to Windows, Rendering Editors, and then choose Hypershade. But we can also click this icon right here in our main interface, and this will also open a Hypershade window. Alternatively, we can go to Panels, Panel, and choose the Hypershade here to open the Hypershade in a specific panel and not in a separate window. So I'm going to open it here in a separate panel, select my geometry, and now I want to assign a new material. And I've just expanded here and made the Hypershade full view. By default, every object that gets created is assigned this material right here, a Lambert 1. And you'll notice that there are two other materials here as well, one for particles and one for a shader glow effect. These are default and will automatically be applied if you're using particles or if you add a shader glow. At any point in time, we can create a new material and override these, or basically just ignore these. Toggle back here so we can see our split screen. We can create any material that we need to by clicking on the Create menu and going to Materials. You can see we have quite a list of materials here. But then we also have another list of materials down here, the different mental ray materials. Mental Ray being a third party high end rendering engine that comes bundled with Maya. Another way outside of the Hypershade is just to right click on your model and hold that mouse button down. And we get a new marking menu. Just do it up here a little bit. And at the very bottom of our marking menu, you can see we have Assign New Material. And I can just click that. This brings up a very similar window to what we just saw when we chose our Maya materials, but this one is the Create Render Node window that has both Maya materials and Mental Ray materials. So we can just click any one of these in here. For our crow, I'm going to choose the anisotropic shader. Let's go full screen here with our Hypershade window, and I'm going to turn off the attribute editor and channel box just so that we can see things full screen. Now, once inside of here, you can see here is my anisotropic shader. Choose that and hit F to frame our selection. We can also pan around in here or zoom in and zoom out, just like we would with our normal cameras. Now, over to the right, we have the material viewer, and this is all again inside the Hypershade. But this shows us what our material will end up looking like. And we can change this. Instead of looking at the shader ball, we can look at cloth, ocean, and just see different types of surfaces and how they react to the material as well as just default lighting. I'm going to keep it up on sphere here because we can really see the anisotropic highlight. Now, I'm not going to get into the depth of all of the different materials and shaders that we have inside of Maya. You can kind of play around and read up on them. But the anisotropic shader I'm using here for the crow is good because this type of shader tries to simulate multiple surfaces of a same material. So, for instance, feather, it's all the same object, but there's microscopic variations in each strand of that feather. And so this anisotropic material helps break up the light that would hit that at a microscopic level. So this one kind of works for us here. And if we scroll down here, scale that up a bit, we can move all these windows around. You can see that we have our color here. And when I change that, it interactively updates. And we can change the angle of that specular highlight there. So I'm going to take this just at its default. And let's come over to the built-in node editor that is also part of the Hypershade. And you can see that we get a broken out view of our anisotropic material here and all of the individual channels, very similar to what we're seeing over here. So we get a lot of different ways to see the same information. And as you work with materials and textures, you'll see kind of how valuable that is that you have one area that you can change attributes quickly. You have another area where you can make connections between materials or textures. And then you have the viewport up here where you can see all of your different materials that are inside of Maya or inside your current scene. Now, also bundled over here is that create render window. I'm just going to detach that just so that we can see it. Same window that we had before, enabled by choosing create and going through this menu, as well as by right clicking on our model itself. So what we want to do is add a texture to our object. And we want to add that to the materials color channel. Let's just go back out here and go through this process a little bit. So I have my crow, and let's go look at our UV textures. We've finished our UVs. We laid all of those out. Now what do? We go to polygons, and at the very bottom of this menu, you'll see the UV snapshot. That is going to open up the UV snapshot menu options. And from here, we can set the actual size of our UV layout that we want it to be. This is going to write this out to a texture. So I could just type a name in here. We could just call this crow diff for diffuse. And then we could save this out as a JPEG, a PNG. TIFF might be the safest way to go here. And set our resolution to like a 2K image or 2048 pixels by 2048 pixels. We hit OK, and it's going to save this out into its own texture and basically give us a template that we can then bring into a paint package like Photoshop and paint or add all of our texture information. The trick is that we need to add that texture information inside of our UV shells. Once inside there and we finish painting everything we need to, we can then bring that image into Maya and it will match this UV template perfectly because we used it to paint on, and then we'll be able to see our texture on the model itself. Let's take a break and then we'll come back and continue applying materials and textures.